Do you have an old school DS? Guys, today on Golf Carts Modified, we're going to be doing a Navitas 4 kilowatt AC motor with 600 amp controller. We're going to be going step by step on converting a old resistor cart, and this works for the resistor and the series carts. We're going to cover everything from the PB8 pedal box install all the way to installing a new IQ plate to mount the controller on. So stick around, let's get into this. Let's go modify. So before we jump in on this DS, let's kind of go over some of the parts we're going to need. Well, you automatically know I'm going to have a Navitas, it's a 600 amp. 600 amp controller, and I'm running a 4 kilowatt motor. Guys, I'm running a 4 kW on mine because my cart's not going to be lifted. You can run a 5 kW, but the cart will have to be lifted, and you will probably lose your shocks. It's not going to probably. You're gonna lose your shocks. So, but I don't run shocks on any of my club cars or my TXTs anyway. So, AC kit, and you automatically know you're gonna have to have a 400 amp solenoid. We sell the MZJ 400 amp solenoid. Okay, another thing you're gonna have to have, now guys, it doesn't matter if you're running, if you have an old series cart or if you have a resistor cart like mine, you're gonna have to upgrade to a harness. This is a 3900 harness. This is what we sell at Golf Carts Modified. Gotta have this. If you wanna run with the big boys, gotta have a new harness. Don't let it scare you, it's really not that bad. I'll show you, it's easy. You're also gonna have to have a run toe switch. No, that's a run toe switch. That is a forward and reverse switch, which you'll have to have that too. Okay, so on the older carts, like my cart, resistor cart, mine's a 94. Some of the series carts, if your cart doesn't have an M core in it, you're gonna have to run a PB8 pedal box. This is a box with a 3-stage potentiometer and a micro switch. Gotta have that. Next piece is optional. My cart was a resistor cart, so I didn't have a plate on the back of mine. So you'll see where this comes into play here in just a minute. But had to have a plate, so I got me one ordered. Throw it in the cart. All right, now that y'all kind of seen the parts, y'all seen me do this before. Let's get busy. Oh, there it is. Found it. Okay, so this cart that I'm building, the body wasn't on it anyway, and when I picked up the cart, most of the body was hanging off. So I went ahead and pulled it off. I've had this cart for about 2 or 3 years. It's actually set at my family's ranch. Believe it or not, it's actually in really good shape. There's a few pieces that I have to replace, but not a big deal. So here we have the rear end. You notice I have the shocks taken off. I never run shocks on the back of my EasyGoes or my club cars. This one's not going to be any different. Now, because we're putting the 4K in, it's a little bit easier to maneuver because it's not quite as heavy. Now, if you don't want to take the body off, what you can do, you can pull your wheel and tire off, and then they'll have an inner fender. You pull that off, lift your cart up. You may or may not have to pull the spring down, but you can go through the inner fender well and get to it. Now you can also come up through the back. It's a little bit more difficult. It's always going to be the easiest with the body off. You'll see here in just a second. Like I said, the 4K is not quite as heavy. It's a little bit more manageable, but it's still a big chunk of big chunk of steel, and it will hurt you if you're not careful. So let's get this one put in. Let me put this motor in. You think I know that? There we go. Oh, just like that. Always so much fun. Now that our motor is in, this motor only orientates one way. On a club car, you have a big anchor bolt that sits down here. A lot of people always ask what size that bolt is. It's a 5/16 18. Now I went and bought all new grade 8 hardware to put my kit in with. Grade 5 will work just fine. These are 1/4 20 by 2.5. This is a 5/16 18 by 1.5 inches. So once you get everything lined up, like I said, there's only really one orientation to this motor. So I'm gonna get my 3 screws in here. Get everything going. I always like to run all mine up by hand. It is cold, believe it or not, in Texas. And then this one, I'll get you a better view, comes in on the bottom. All right, guys, don't ever use your bolts to suck up your motor. Get your motor up next to the flange and then tighten your motor. I'm gonna grab my wrench. When I come back, we'll have this buttoned up. Okay, now that we have everything bolted up, everything is tight. You can see the orientation. All of our bolts are facing straight up. Now on a DS, this one's not lifted, and this is an option, but I'm gonna go show you guys anyway because I'm gonna do it. Like I said, I don't run rear shocks on mine, so you can see just how tight the shock mounts are gonna be, even next to the 4K. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, and this is only because I'm a big guy, 300 pounds anyway, I'm gonna take my grinder and I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna just kind of get rid of this corner right here. It's not gonna hurt. I mean, I wouldn't come in here and cut all the way back, but I am gonna round this off just in case I ever do put a back seat on this. I don't think there will ever be a chance. You got a lot of room back there. It shouldn't hit, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. On this side, yeah, nothing to worry about. But over here, like I said, you're probably not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna do it as an extra precaution and because I like to make more work for myself. So I'm gonna bust out the grinder. We'll shave some of this off. And then we will tackle everything else. Well, like I said before, this is an old resistor cart. This is actually a 1994 Club Car DS resistor cart. We do have a V-Glide in it, which we're going to take out. The V-Glide comes down to this resistor pack right here, and it comes with this stock heat shield, okay? I'm definitely not going to use that. It's just a really thin piece of aluminum. All it is a heat shroud for the coil. All you got to do to take that off is take a 3/8 wrench. You got 2 bolts, one in each corner. The good thing about it is it's into the frame. There's not a nut that you have to worry about behind it, so you won't need a backup. And then it just lifts up, comes right out. All right, so the next step, we need to get rid of our V-Glide, that nasty coil. That one's already undone. I'm not gonna sit here and take the time and take my wrench and go through all that. I'm not gonna use any of these cables. You probably won't either. I'm just gonna take my cutters. Because I'm probably just gonna throw all this in the trash anyway. Okay, still takes a 3/8 wrench. Like I said, it's into this frame. Voila. There is the coil pack. get rid of that nasty old 1994 technology. Alright, so guys, this is what you're going to commonly see in a DS. This is a V-Glide. Most of the time it's going to have a cover on it. Okay, and they came in a bunch of carts. They came in series carts, they came in resistor carts. It's just a old school technology, and we're not going to use it. Like I said, so I'm just going to clean stuff up. I'm just trying to get stuff out of the cart so that I can get all our new stuff in. And I'm a lot better at demo than I am anything. So let's cut these bad boys out because, like I said, I don't plan on using them again. If you want to take the time and mess with it, that is your go. Get out of there. Nothing better than taking out old parts. I know y'all are probably sitting there going, Ryan, you could use those for something else. No, I'm not going to. Alright, that's the old charging port. None of this stuff was even hooked up in my cart, guys. I mean, and I'm not using this. This is the old forward reverse switch. We're not going to be using that either. So don't be afraid to cut all this stuff out because you're putting a new harness in. So all of this stuff can go bye-bye. Deuces. Alright guys and gals, so this is an IQ plate, or it's what I call it as an IQ plate. This slides right into here and then mounts with 3 little holes up top. And then you can put a screw in from the sides. So, quick tip on this plate. If you notice, it's a little long here and it's a little long over there. Okay, quick tip of the day. They make 2 different plates, okay? This plate was $46 to $60, and you have to cut off like an inch off each side. If you buy the one that's made for this cart, it's like $165. So I went the cheap route because I have tools, and I didn't feel like spending another $156. So I'm just gonna mark mine, which I already did on the other side, and I'm gonna take my Dremel or your cutoff tool or whatever you want to cut it with. You could too. So I'm gonna cut mine and we're gonna put it in here. Okay, I want to share my top secret file with y'all. Just kidding, that's a file. Nothing special. Just gotta clean this up real quick. Man, I hope this fits. I sure don't want to look bad on YouTube. And oh, like a glove, baby. Man. Oh, look at that. Boom. Y'all ever see anything so pretty? I mean, I hate to pat myself on the back. You know, that's pretty gangster. Okay. So you got 3 holes up here. It did come with bolts, but they didn't send me any nuts, so I'm gonna have to come up with my own. Now, they did send 2 that screw into this piece right here, but as I'm looking at mine, it is not where these holes are on my frame. So it looks like I'm gonna have to measure, which I hate measuring, and I'm gonna have to drill 2 new holes, which sucks, but it is what it is. So, but main thing is this fits. That's what we were going after, because this is what our controller and our solenoid is going to mount to. So yes, I do recognize there is a big hole right there. That is for a OBC if you have a factory charger, which if you have a resistor cart, you did not have an OBC. You can almost guarantee it. But if you do have an OBC and you have this plate, this is where your OBC goes. Most people end up deleting the OBC and go with the aftermarket charger. They take all this out, they get rid of it. I don't like OBCs. I think they're kind of a pain, but to each their own, right? All right, well, let's go ahead and get some bolts in this so we can go ahead and get our controller mocked up. Okay, so now that we have the plate in, now we have our plate from Navitas that goes for our 600 amp controller. So if you'll notice, all of these are concaved. You also get a concave screw, so it sits flush. Now, these are 1/4 20 bolts. Problem is that is not a 1/4 inch hole. But that's why we have power tools. Where did you go? There you are. And voila, through the magic of Milwaukee, now it fits. Okay, so on this plate, that's the only hole that lines up. Now, I can't leave good enough alone, so I gotta put at least one more screw in it. And it's really up to you. You can drill it here, you can drill it there, you can drill it there. You could put 4 of them in there if you had enough screws, but the kit only comes with 3, so I'm gonna rock 2, we're gonna call it a day. Now, once again, I'm gonna take my big old fat marker. Mark my little spot. Take my plate back off, make sure not to drop my nut, or my plate, or my bolt. Grab my old trusted Milwaukee that I found on the side of the road. A little side note here, Ryan is lazy, he doesn't like changing bits, which is why I always have a step bit on my drill. Alright, put our plate back in. Any takers on if I drop this nut? I wouldn't take that, I'd lose. Alright. No, that was me being dumb. That's there. I'm gonna send her a little hard this time, bud. Yeah, look at that, boom. Fixed it. And there we go. Plate is in. Let's mount up our controller. Okay, let's try this again. So I was gonna try to be cool and mount this on the front side, and I put the body on and the body hits the controller in the front. So good news, people. You don't have to mess up like I did. I did it for you. So now you know you gotta put this on the back. Can't mount it on the front. Won't fit. I think we got it right this time, though. I hope so. Hey, look, it fits. I did it right. Yahtzee. All right, now let's put our controller back on. Okay. Go ahead and get our controller mounted in. Found it. Eight millimeter. Get our last two in down here. Always remember, guys, that plate is aluminum. That's why you have a locking washer. Always remember to use the biggest wrench you can for the smallest bolts. Look, that's all as tight as that needs to be. It doesn't have to be, you know, if you get it too tight, it will strip. We're mounted in. Pro tip, when it comes to mounting your solenoid, it doesn't matter if you have an MZJ 400 or an Albright or even like a really, really expensive Gigavac. Okay, this new harness and everything, all your 16-pin connector, everything's gonna be running right here. And on the new harness, the wires aren't really, they're pretty short. So I always, on a DS, I would recommend running your solenoid a little bit further down and a little bit further up. Now, I supply you, if you order your cables through Golf Carts Modified, I give you a 14-inch jumper to go from your solenoid to your battery positive. Well, if you get it too close, those 2-gauge cables are not going to want to bend back up to it. So the trick is to finding somewhere that's relatively close, but not super close. Now, on these IQ plates, there's a hole already here. That'll give you a starting point, okay? That's a pretty good jump. That'll let you get your cable over to your B positive, and it's still close enough to where you can tie into all your activation wires. So let's get it mounted. All right, before we start working back on the cart, let's talk about the 3900 harness. This is where a lot of the questions come in, so I wanted to kind of go over this, and let's just do a preview before we get ready to go into the cart. This way, if you see me install it and you still don't understand, you can go back to this part of the video. You can hopefully pick up what I'm laying down. Okay, so the 3900 harness is a pretty good length harness. It's made for a stock 2-seater, okay? It's about, it's about 8 foot long, maybe 9 foot long. So on the back end of the harness, you're gonna have your main 16-pin connector. Shortly followed off the 16-pin are going to be most of the cables going to the solenoid. Now, this is where it gets confusing. When you get your harness, the first thing you're going to see that's coming out of that 16-pin harness is a cable with a 3-prong. This is for the old IQ speed sensor on the old motors. We're not going to be using that. We're going to be using an AC kit, so it's really no longer needed. Now, you can cut this off at the back of the harness, or you can do what I did, and I just took a pick and you push these in. If you see, they're just small Molex connectors. You push in from the sides, and then you just pop them out. Once you get done with that, throw it away. You don't need it anymore. Okay, now let's get back to these wires right here. I know that looks like a lot of wires. So, first wire we're going to come across is going to be the main red wire, okay? This is going to go to the hot side of the solenoid, and when I say hot, that means the battery cable coming from the battery pack to whatever side of the solenoid you're going to, this is what side that goes to, okay? Now, if you notice, it's got a fuse in it. It's also got a Spade connector. Now, this is going to be important. When I'm doing a DS, this is where you put in your run-toe switch, okay? and I'll show you the run-toe switch here in a minute when we install it. To make this easier on you guys, what I do is I just unplug this. This is just a Spade connector. It just unplugs. And then that's where I put my run-toe line, or my run-toe switch in line is right here. When I go to install this, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So the only other thing is, if you're running an MZJ400, that little bitty end is not going to fit. You're going to have to cut this off and put a bigger eyelet for a 3/8 stud. All right, the next cable is this brown cable. Guys, if you have a series cart or a resistor cart, the chances of you having a OBC are going to be very slim to none. This is for an OBC. I'm taking this out because I don't need it. I don't have an OBC. I run an aftermarket charger. I do on all my carts. So there's no need for this. Now you're going to say, Ryan, how do you take it out? Where do you know where it goes? Guys, I've installed this kit. I've owned all these connections. This does not go back up to your 16-pin connector. It goes to the very other end of the harness, all the way down here to this brown wire right here. Okay, so all these wires are taped through this entire loom, okay? So you can either leave it there or you can cut it out. I don't want mine in there because it's just one thing else for you to mess up when you're looking at it. So I'm gonna cut mine out. And you can either cut it all the way through you can cut all the loom out, cut that whole wire out, or you just take a pair of nips, just clip that bad boy right there. Unless that's, like I said, unless you have OBC, you're not gonna use that wire. Okay, now this is where it might get a little confusing. So you have three solenoid wires, okay? Other than the big one, the red one that goes to your big post. Don't lose me now. Okay, you're gonna have one with 2 blue wires, and you're gonna have another one with a single blue wire. Those go to the activation post, which are your small posts on the solenoid. These go on the same side, okay? Now you have 2 black cables, okay? You're gonna have one with a small eyelet and one with the bigger eyelet. The black one with the small eyelet goes to the other side of the solenoid opposite the 2 blue cables. The black cable with the big eyelet, I always run to the B negative on my controller. So guys, that pretty much takes care of all those wires. You're gonna come down. Next set of wires are gonna be for your forward and reverse switch. Excuse me, guys. If you get a kit from us, our forward reverse switches don't have a F and R on it, okay? So, the main thing that you're looking for here is this color code. Gray on the outside, brown on the outside, blue in the middle. And then I'll let you guess which way is forward and which way is reverse. If you don't know, people, it's in the Navitas dashboard app. It tells you if you're in forward, neutral, or reverse. So, you should be looking at your app anyway when you're getting ready to set all this up. But we'll go through that again. Like I said, remember, gray on the outside, brown on the outside, blue in the middle. So have 6 connections. Guys, it doesn't matter which side you put it on, put them all on the same side and rock and roll. All right, scrolling back down, we got these 5 wires right here. You're gonna have a green, a blue, a purple, white, and yellow. Now, these can wire up the same way on a bunch of different products. This is a PB6 pedal box. Now, on this one, all your PB6 pedal boxes are gonna have 4 cables coming out of it. You gotta have 5 cables, guys. You got 3 for your 3-stage potentiometer and 2 for your micro switch. The other thing is guys, when you see this, most people think this is the way this mounts in. That's wrong. It's actually upside down. When you mount this in your cart, this is how they mount. And your connecting rod, or your throttle rod, goes here. And that's how you get your voltage for your pedal. It's actually a pretty nice little setup. It's not super big. They're not hard to install. We're gonna walk you through it. Like I said, don't be scared of this stuff. This ain't hard. This is pretty easy. Okay, so out of the 3900 harness, you're gonna have a blue wire and a green wire, and they automatically come with bullet connectors. Guys, these are for the micro switch. You cannot mess these two up. They're the only ones with bullet connectors, okay? If you have a M-Core, all these colors just line up, okay? You're gonna go white to white, yellow to yellow, purple to purple, green to green, and blue to blue. Now on a PB8 pedal box, might be a little bit different because I've run into about 5 different PB8 pedal boxes and they all have different wire combinations. The biggest thing is make sure you get your micro switch wires right, okay? And it's not hard to figure out. When I put mine in, we'll go over this a little bit more in detail. These are the ones that go to your potentiometer. Now, a lot of the PB8 pedal boxes are already color coded. So if you do get one that has the same color, well, you automatically know it's gonna go color for color, all right? So when we get through putting the PB8 pedal box in here in a minute, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Last thing is all the stuff that goes up to your dash. You're gonna have a blue and red with a small eyelet. Blue on one side, red on the other. That's what gives you your on-off. We already discussed this brown. We're not gonna need it. All of these other cables, this is all for, you know, a battery meter if you have it in your dash. I never run a battery meter in my dash. I usually just use my phone because the app tells you what your voltage looks like. So I normally don't even, I'm not gonna cut them off. I just never run these. I normally zip tie them together, put a piece of heat shrink over them, call it a day. The main two that you want to be focused on are going to be that blue and red with a small eyelet. So now that we've kind of gone over that, I know that was kind of lengthy, but it is kind of one of the most asked things other than installing a PB8 pedal box. So now that we've kind of talked it over, let's go ahead and let's throw this in the cart, shall we? All right, so let's start getting everything wired up. First off, we're going to start with our 16-pin connection. Go till you hear it click. Okay, then remember all the wires that we went through? So we're going to take our first blue one, and we're going to come over here to our small post. And I use a pair of tweezers because I've got big fingers. So we have our double blue and our blue. We're going to run both of those right there. We're going to take our black one with the small eyelet. It's going to go to the other side. Guys, you can go get these little tweezers at Harbor Freight. They're like $5 or $6. They come in super handy on some of the smaller stuff. I'm notorious for dropping these. Like this one's still being kind of a pain. Come on, dude. And I lost it. It's alright, I had an extra one. Alright, I'm gonna get mine situated here where everything's nice and neat. Put my black one on. My flat washer. My little lock washer. And then the nut. These take a 7mm. Remember, don't over tighten these. Okay, while we're here, I went ahead. This was going to go to our B negative. It's the black one with the big end on it. So I went ahead and put a big eyelet on this one. This one is going to go over here on this post. Now when you get your battery cable kits from us, you'll get a 28-inch cable, and it'll have a bigger hole. I'm going to route mine down underneath the plate And don't forget to, I knocked my cable off. I'll have to go back down there and grab it. Alright, got that on there. Flat washer, lock washer. And this is a 5/16 nut. Now guys, on these solenoids, remember, you don't want these wires up here accidentally touching these wires. It'll leave your cart on all the time. So make sure you don't let any of these big wires touch contact over here. Like I said, it's a 5/8, I'm sorry. Told y'all wrong. Alright, you want those good and snug. Take your 7mm, tighten your activation post down. Now guys, these are tiny, so don't get too crazy. You got a lock washer on them, they won't come off. Alright, so all we have left is this black cable with the big eyelet. Now the nice thing is if you have the body off, so this is a lot easier to wire. This is going to go right here with our B negative, and we already have another 28 gauge, or 28 gauge, 2 gauge, 28 inch long cable that runs from the B minus on the controller to the negative battery on the pack. So this will be completing your circuit to your 48 volts. We'll take our screw. I always put my smaller ones on top. That way I make sure I get a good connection with my big lugs. And this is a 10mm bolt. Get it going in there hand tight. Now guys, if you notice, I did run my wiring harness before I put my motor cables and everything else on. That's so that I could see where everything was going to lay. If I wanted to go ahead and start zip tying some of this stuff and getting it out of the way, I could. Alright, she's in. So here's our run toe switch. Okay, on, off. Now our switch comes with this gray connector. Okay, I don't have any of those connectors, so what I do is I come in, I'm gonna cut this piece of tape that's holding this loom on. I'm gonna pull that back. And I'm gonna cut those two wires, and then I am going to strip both of these wires back. They should be 12 gauge. Well, I wouldn't want to strip all that well. There we go. Be careful not to nick too many of your wires. All right. So go ahead and unplug this. You know you're going to need a male and a female spade. Let's get those crimped on. All right. So we have our male and female spade. Make sure you get a good connection. You don't want those pulling off. Also, make sure you use the right size terminal. Don't be putting a big gauge terminal on a small wire. You will have problems later down the road, I promise. All right, now we're in. I'm gonna tuck this back into my loom. All right, so now we're just gonna plug and play. Maybe, come on, work with me here. we go. Got one. And two. Now we can drill our hole. We can run our run toe switch right there. Just gotta drill us a hole. Go ahead, unscrew your cover. Pull that off. Make sure you can get the lock nut. There you go. Place it in. Just put it as easy as that. Now that everything's wired up, we have our W to W, our V to V, our U to U. We have from the outgoing side of the solenoid to the B positive, the other side of the solenoid, which is our hot side, going to our batteries. We have our small red wire hooked on that side along with it. We have our 3 blue wires going to our small post. We have our black wire going to our other small post. We have our B minus going to our negative pack. We have our run toe switch mounted in, ready to go. Everything's zip tied up. We have our thermal and speed sensor all plugged up. Everything's nice and tight. Made some custom looms out of zip ties just to kind of hold everything, make everything nice and sturdy. Remember, these are 1/2" nuts on your motor and 10mm on your controller. Now that we got the back half buttoned up, we can move up to the front and wire in that box. Okay, let's talk about mounting your PB8 pedal box. First thing you're going to have to do is remove the old V-Glide that's still in the cart. Now to do that, it has 2 screws and they're inside the V-Glide. The best way to get to them is from underneath the frame. It's going to be 2 3/8 nuts. Most of them aren't tight, and most of them, mine were a little rusted, they weren't bad. I didn't even have to hit them with WD-40. I put a wrench on them, they came right off. You're going to pull the V-Glide off and you're going to be going back with a PB8 pedal box. So guys, it's not going to just mount in there with those holes. You're going to have to build a mount. But don't worry, I went ahead and I built one, and I tried to do it as low buck and as easy and as less fabrication free as I could. And it wasn't really that bad. Just about anybody can do this. The way I did this was pretty simple. I went to one of the big box stores that's orange, and I bought some just regular galvanized 90-degree brackets. Now I bought 3" and 2.5. The 3-inch I didn't use, they were too big. So I went with the 2.5 or the 2-inch. You can go with either one. Now, the great thing about these are they're galvanized, so they're not gonna rust. The other great thing is, if you look at the back of your PB8, and you look at these mounting tabs, they almost line up perfect. You have to drill out one just a little bit to get it to fit. Let me get a better shot of that. They mount just like that, okay? So, drill one of those out, you can put it in. I went ahead and got mine all mounted up. Found it. Okay, so you can see I cut the end of mine off, and you'll see why here in just a second when we throw it in the cart. It's because it stuck past the frame and it was going to hit the batteries. So really all I had to do was just take my Dremel and cut off just a little bit of those L brackets. Now, I didn't put the top bolts in mine, I just put the bottom ones in mine. And the reason I did that is because the frame is on a slope, and one of these legs is gonna have to pivot. So in order to get this thing to mount straight and nice and tight, I went with one screw, I put lock nuts on these, and then I put lock nuts on the bottom. And I can promise you, these 2 screws and these 2 screws are way plenty to hold that box. So what I did was, I put this on top of the frame rail because this sits further down, okay? And I took a Sharpie, I marked where my sweep from the V-Glide was, and I got that as close to it as I could, which this has moved pretty far forward underneath the seats. I mean, it's almost in the same spot, not quite. So the only other modification to the PB8 box that you're gonna have to make is if you're going to use the existing joints that come off the cart, that come off the connecting rod. It's a little bitty ball. You'll have to drill that out. You'll have to drill this hole to a 1/4-inch hole. Now, I know a lot of you are probably like, Ryan, why didn't you put it in the bottom hole? Well, because I was actually getting more sweep like that with my rod. If I'd have had it down there, it was only going like right there. And I wanted to get as much sweep as I could. So let's get this mounted in the cart. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, you can see the V-Glide here. There's a little plastic screw or aluminum screw right here. And then there's another one on the back side of the wiper that you can't hardly get to. But there's 2 little nuts right here underneath the frame. Just use a 3/8 wrench, and that pops out. So you're gonna have the 2 existing holes right here from the V-Glide. That's not gonna work because the PB8 pedal box is a lot bigger. So what I did was I got my brackets made. Okay. Now I got mine positioned almost as far forward as I could. And I had to move it back so that we didn't get inside the battery rack, and I had to have enough room to where my connector rod would fit on the PB8 pedal box. Once I got it in a position, I made my marks. I drilled 2 new holes, and now this thing mounts pretty nice. Now, I used an 832 screw to go through the frame. That way you don't have to drill a big, huge hole. There's no need for a 1/4-inch bolt in this, guys. An 832 will hold plenty. You can get 832s at any of the big stores. It's a pretty common size. I mean, if you want to step up to a 1032, you can. I think it's a little overkill. So you see we're in, I mean, it's not gonna move, it's tight, okay? Pull our wires back. Guys, always check this rod right here, okay? This is your accelerator rod, whatever. Mine was actually busted. It was so rusted through, and I called up my buddy Steve with Custom Carts of Virginia. He had a bunch of these. I sent him one. So guys, if you're looking for parts for DS's that are kind of hard to find, give Steve a call. He's got all kinds of cool stuff. He will definitely hook you up. So we're gonna slide this back, put it on, and now we're gonna check our pedal. And we're good to go. So now all we're gonna have to do is pretty much just wire it up. Okay, for this PB pedal box, we're gonna go ahead and we're going to, first off, we're gonna get the wires right. Okay, so for this PB8 pedal box, the micro switch actually has two leads, a black and a red. It's not real hard to determine which one is which. One will definitely have power and one will not have power. So on mine, the black wire connects to the green and the red wire connects to the blue. Now on a PB8 pedal box that's different than this, it won't have wires, it'll just have 3 spades. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like, and I'll show you which ones to wire. Now when it comes to our purple, yellow, and white wire, that's a little different because I have a black wire and I have a red wire and a white wire, and it wasn't real hard to troubleshoot. I just went through and looked at the schematics that Travis sent, and I was able to figure out what wire went where. So my white wire goes to my white wire, my black one is going to go to my purple one. And these are all spade connectors. And then red goes to yellow. Now, some of the PB8 pedal boxes are already pre-wired. They'll have the same matching colors. You can just match them up. It's pretty simple. The hardest part was just getting the box mounted, but you saw how hard that was. It was pretty simple, right? All right, now we just got to get all this stuff tied down. So you remember how I was telling you that there's different PB8 pedal boxes? Well, this is a Curtis PB8 pedal box. I had Travis send me this just so I could show you guys the difference. So the pedal box that I have, that I put in my cart, the micro switch actually had 2 wires coming off of it. Now this Curtis PB8 pedal box, the micro switch has 3 spades. So if you have one that looks like this, that has a long gray wire with it and has the black, white, and red wire coming out of it, when you go to wire up your micro switch, it's green to the outside and blue to the other side, and the middle one is open. So if you get a Curtis box like this and your micro switch is like that and there's no wires coming out of it, these are the wires coming off of your 3900 harness. This is where they plug in. Green on the outside, blue on the inside. Now, Ryan, does this wire up different? Yeah, it's a completely different wiring code than the one that we put in my cart. If you remember on my cart, we did white to white, yellow to red, and black to purple. Well, this one is wired completely different. They put the wires in a different spot on the potentiometer inside the box. So if you get a Curtis PB8 pedal box that has the long gray wire and it has the micro switches, this red wire will go to the white wire on the harness. The black wire, these are small, the black wire will go to the yellow wire on the harness, and the white wire will go to the purple wire on the harness. So, and guys, those are basically the 2 that you'll see. If you order from us, these are the 2 different types of pedal boxes we sell. So the last thing we really have left to hook up on our cart, besides our charging port, which I'm not going to mount mine in my video because I run a totally different charger than what everybody else does, and I'm mounting mine in a different location, and I don't want to confuse you guys. Now, I will be doing another video that shows how I'll be setting my charging system up. If you want to follow that, you can. The last thing is going to be your OTF. So the OTF is probably one of the simplest things to hook up. On the back of the controller, right next to your 16-pin and your 10-pin connector, you're going to have an 8-pin connector that goes to the OTF. Now, plug that in. You can literally mount the OTF anywhere you want. You can mount it on the dash, you can mount it inside the instrument compartment, you can mount them under the seat. I'm not going to put mine in this time. Well, for one, I still have a ton of work to do to this cart, and mounting it, I have no idea where I'm going to mount it, if I mount it at all. I like to be sneaky, and I'm building my cart to run around on the street, and if somebody sees this sticking up on my dash, they're going to know something's up. So I'm not going to be installing mine. I will show you where to plug this in real quick. Like I said, this is probably the easiest step out of the whole thing. They do give you a Velcro backing right here, so you can mount it, or you can mount it in hard, and those are millimeter screws. I believe they're 5.5, they're not 5.5, they're bigger than that. So yeah, pretty easy to install. Let's go plug it in. Your OTF is going to mount right here. You actually have a plug that says OTF on it. I always run mine from the dash back up. It's a lot easier. Like I said, this is just a simple plug and play, and you're in. Except I'm not going to run one, so I'm going to be taking mine out, and I'm going to put my plug back in. Make sure I don't get any water or anything up in my pack. And then you are good to go. So guys, I hope this brought you some insight on how to install this kit. I do realize that I didn't put the key back in the dash on this video, and I also didn't mount the forward and reverse switch on this video. That's because I still have a ton of work to do to this cart. I still got to put a body on it. I've still got to get all the brakes done up on it. So I do have some more videos coming out on this DS. I also have a Club Car Resistor sitting next to me that we're fixing to do a 440 swap on. And we'll probably end up swapping over to AC, but I wanted to see how powerful the 440 was in the stock cart. So we'd like to thank the guys at Navitas, and also my partners Corey and Travis with Golf Carts Modified. They're the guys that make these videos happen. Without them, a lot of these parts wouldn't be available for me to shoot this. So if you have any other questions, you know how to find me. You can always find us on our Facebook page, Golf Carts Modified. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. There's virtually a bunch of ways to get a hold of me. So, or Corey or Travis. Guys, if you like this, let me know. If there was something I left out and y'all want me to put it back in another video, make sure to drop me a comment. Always have fun, be safe, go modify.